Good evening. I'm filling in for President Bias, who will not be here tonight. I'm acting President Jim Sands. We're going to begin this evening with a short, we hope, special session of council, and then we will move into committee reports. We have 4 committees: the Environment Committee, Community Issues Committee, Planning and Development Committee, Finance and Personnel to deal with. But first, we have a special session. We have 7 members present. I'm acting president, but I will also vote on ordinances as necessary. So we have a quorum. We're going to, our ordinance for third reading, we have 1 ordinance for third reading. Ordinance 8910, an ordinance amending the 2010 appropriation ordinance, introduced by Member Kuhn.
I move to adopt Ordinance 8910.
Second.
This ordinance has several things in it. Some of them are housekeeping. We need to appropriate from the unappropriated balance the following sums: $35,000 to the Tourism Fund to make payments to the Athens County Convention and Visitors Bureau. This money comes in from the guest transient tax, and I think we have a certain amount of time that once it comes in, that we need to pay them. Also, $9,000 to the General Fund Police for supplies. These are for unanticipated expenses. $15,000 to the General Fund Other Administration for Halloween. 46 cents to the Sewer Debt Fund to cover loan interest, and $5,614.57 to Route 56 SA Debt Fund for transfer, and this increases the total appropriation by said amounts. Section 2, this is decreasing and increasing the following. First of all, would be to decrease the General Fund Auditor 101.102 TC 200 by $2,000 and increasing TC $500 by $2,000 for office chairs. This would be for the auditor's office. And then decreasing sewer fund maintenance 750.635 TC 100 by $50,000 and increase TC $200 by $50,000 for sewer maintenance projects. And then we come to Section 3, and these are interfund transfers. The first one is from the General Fund 101 to Agency Fund 901, 40 cents. And Route 56 SA Debt Fund 764 to Street Rehabilitation 572, $5,614.57.
Any questions or comments about this? This is for third reading, or 1 ordinance for third reading. All in favor of adopting ordinance 8910 signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. Ordinance passes 7-0. Thank you, Member Kuhn. These are ordinances for second reading. An ordinance for second reading normally is just that. We read it for a second time. Sometimes questions or comments arise, and I believe a couple of these will have some activity happening. First ordinance for second reading is 9110. An ordinance declaring certain vehicles no longer needed for a municipal purpose, introduced by Councilmember Bain. Member Bain.
Acting Mr. President, I'd like to move to amend 9110 to add another vehicle, 1990 Toyota 4T 1S V2 1E 4L U 118853 is its serial number.
Didn't get all that down.
It doesn't matter.
Second.
Thank you. The police department has asked us, we were just talking about the amendment. I guess they just found another vehicle to sell.
Okay. Member Bain asked to amend Ordinance 9110 by adding another vehicle. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Same sign. Okay. This ordinance 9110 has been amended and read for the first time. First time. And so we will see it again next week. Ordinance 9310, an ordinance authorizing the Service Safety Director to enter into contract with Creative Microsystems, Inc. to expand the city's existing financial system to add a utilities billing module and declaring an emergency, introduced by Member Bain.
Mr. President, at this time, I'd like to move to suspend the rules on 9310.
I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Second.
The reason for the suspension, it's been requested that we get this done before the end of the company's fiscal year, and that's what's going on here.
All members in favor of we didn't amend. We just all in favor of suspension signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay.
And I move adoption of 9310.
Second.
We have a proposal for a new software module out of the same office that runs our existing financial system. It's probably fitting and proper we would change it right now because I think the handhelds are finally working, but we'll see how that works. I mean, it's been a perennial problem. We ask for certain issues. The good news is that we could expand it indefinitely, so watch out, we might annex large areas. Not really, but I'm saying that with my tongue very far into the cheek. But the other thing is that we also cannot do certain other things. The e-billing is the one that we couldn't do. So, I mean, we have a definitive answer, or we have an answer that says you can do it if you want to pay a lot of money, and we aren't willing to do it. So we're going to go with the proposal. I will refrain from comparing it to Blackboard.
All those in favor of ordinance 9310? I'm sorry, did we have some? I'm sorry, Mayor.
One of the reasons why we're changing this, of course, is that our present software is not supported by the company that put it out several years ago, more than several years ago. And we actually did upgrade it or change it. We actually pulled somebody out of some other company who's long since, not working for the previous company, the original company that supported the software to upgrade it. So it creates a little bit of an impediment to actually modify things. And this will be a system that is compatible with the auditor's office. So the transition from one to the other will be easier.
It'll be good for a while.
As all software is.
All right.
Okay. All those in favor of ordinance 9310 signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? 7 to none. Passes. And I'm sorry, now we're back to ordinance 9410, an ordinance amending the part-time and seasonal staffing levels and declaring an emergency. Ordinance 9510, an ordinance amending the 2010 appropriation ordinance. Member Kuhn.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move to consider ordinance 9510 under suspension of the rules.
Second.
The reason for the suspension is because they need to get this work done this fall. This is to repair the ramp in front of the Richland Avenue, the fire station on Richland Avenue, Station B, I guess it's called. And they just need to get that work done before winter.
All those in favor of suspension? Aye. Opposed? Okay. Member Kuhn.
I move to adopt ordinance 9510.
Second.
And for the reasons I just stated, they need to get this work done this fall before winter.
Any other comments? Okay. All those in favor of adopting ordinance 9510 signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Okay, this passes also. Ordinance 9610, an ordinance granting a revocable license to Southeast Beverage Company, 772 West Union Street, for the use of the city right-of-way for a sign. Ordinance 9710, an ordinance amending Athens City Code Title 11, Business Regulations, Chapter 11.08, Taxi Cabs, introduced by Councilmember Fall. A resolution for second reading. I'd like to move that we consider this resolution under suspension of the rules.
Second.
And we are asking for this because we need to return our accepted resolution to the county auditor by October 1st. That's fast coming up. Okay. All those in favor of suspension?
Aye.
Those opposed? Same sign? Okay. And therefore, I move adoption of Resolution 0910.
Second.
Second.
Okay. This ordinance, this resolution, I'm sorry, accepts amounts proposed by the county auditor and the county budget commission for money that was collected by them through the Athens city property tax, Athens county property tax. And we receive a small amount for those properties within the city of Athens. Small amount, a few mills, but it adds up to $853,000 that we will be owed for this property tax. And so it's really worth getting this resolution back on it. Mayor?
I believe it's a resolution. This is signed by almost all the members of council. Is that how it works? I forget. And it's one of the few things I don't sign, I believe. So make sure all you guys get your John Hancock's on it for October 1st.
Auditor, I meant to ask, is this, are these funds, will they transfer to us this calendar year, or is that next year?
Well, it's the same percentages that we've been collecting ever since I've been in office anyway. So we'll continue to get this money. It's probably for next year.
That's okay. All those in favor of Resolution 0910, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Thank you. Okay. We are adjourning the special session. We'll move into the Environment Committee.
Good
Okay,
time.
Laura, do you need
We can go
a
right
minute?
into it.
Just move right on in.
Yes.
Okay. Member Gosley.
So we'll start the Environment Committee off here tonight. We just have one item on the agenda, but it's a big one. This is, some time ago, this was late, I believe, last year, the City Council authorized the mayor to enter into, or to advertise bid proposals for an energy savings contract. Sometimes these are referred to as energy services contracts. And so we put this out for proposals and received two very substantial proposals. Here's one of them. You can see that a lot of engineering goes into this and really a lot of details. And so this is an in-depth analysis of virtually all city buildings, all municipal-owned buildings. And it looks at energy use, electricity, gas, a lot of analysis of heating and cooling systems, and determines ways that we can upgrade our facilities to save energy. So a lot of it's lighting retrofits, replacing lighting structures with more efficient ones. Mechanical upgrades to heating and cooling systems are included in a lot of these buildings that are described in this booklet here. Automation, programmable thermostats, some of it's basic stuff like that that can save substantial money for the city. We got these proposals early 2010, and Perfection Group was chosen as the superior proposal. And they came up with several different levels of services to the city, depending on what improvements we wanted to do, how much it would cost the city, and what the potential savings were over 15-year life of the project. And through a lot of work in the mayor's office, I know Ron Lucas was the lead on this for the mayor. They looked at which parts of these proposals, what level of investment the city wanted to make, which buildings were most important to address. And then we came up with several different proposals. I'm just going to pass these out here.
Everybody's here.
So the first one you receive, it says Phase 1, and so that's for if we do this in two different phases. And then the second one I'm going to pass out includes two phases, 1 and 2 combined. Phase 1 is primarily focusing on the community center. It was thought that we could try this out with one large energy-intensive building that the city operates. And you can see just a summary of the scope of work. A couple windows in City Hall. This is all Phase 1 that I'm discussing here. The community center with a pretty extensive upgrade to heating and cooling, lighting fixtures, both interior and exterior, changing the hot water pumps out to be more efficient, changing the HVAC controls, adding a fan, implementing water conservation, and then there's a few items in the code office and upgrading the lighting systems in the parking garage, which as a 24-hour facility, upgrading those the lighting in there can provide quite a bit of savings. This first phase would be an investment of just under $420,000, $417,380, with a payback on the investment of about 8 years and pretty substantial energy savings. So that's Phase 1, primarily one building. There's a combined Phase 1 and 2 that would do substantially more with a total, and I won't go through every item, but it would include additional buildings such as basically lighting retrofits on a majority of city-owned buildings, and then a few other items, including upgrades to the fire station, both fire stations actually. This would be on page 2 of the Phase 1 and 2 handout. The Law Administration Building, City Hall, Community Center, Code Office, Water Treatment Plant, the Division of Engineering and Public Works, Arts West, both Public Works Annex buildings, the Bus Garage, City Laboratory, the Habitat for Humanity House, the Municipal Court, the City Pool, Parks and Recreation Maintenance Garage, as well as the main parking garage. And of course, we can proceed with Phase 1, and then anything that wasn't included in Phase 1 could be addressed as a second phase, or they could be addressed combined. We do have Perfection here, the two leads at Perfection that were responsible for this project. Rick Anderson and Alan Lindeman. They're here to address any questions that we might have about the proposal or the project. We also have City Planner Paul Logue here as Ron Lucas's stand-in, as he was unable to be here tonight. So if there are questions for the Perfection Group or just in general, I'd like to open the floor to anything from council first. Do you have any comments to add, Mayor, to this?
I believe the ordinances we were putting together for this was all Phase 1, right?
We do have a draft ordinance for Phase 1, and it's likely that we would proceed with Phase 1 and then look at Phase 2 down the line.
You've got Phase 1 and 2 right there.
Give it to Kathy.
Oh, no, it's updated.
Total price on Phase 1 and 2?
So the first one, Phase 1, that was $417,000 and some change. Phases 1 and 2 combined, it would add another around $800,000. So for both phases combined, it was $1.2 million.
Yeah. No,
That one, 417.
Total improvements.
Okay, yeah. And
So
for
we're
both. Go ahead.
kind of questioning this first page here where it says the interest rate is 4.1%.
I'll hand this to Perfection. If you could please, either you can sit at the table here or at the podium.
Let me see this one.
Hello. Hey, how was everybody? The question?
The question on this handout that just went around shows an interest rate of 4.1%.
Correct. When we just put this together late last week, and not having an opportunity to speak with you, I went to what our last interest rate was, quote, from a bank that we have done business with recently, PNC Bank. So again, because of the larger scope of the project, the more money, wasn't sure how you might cash flow that internally. I thought it might be appropriate to just use 15-year finance term.
Okay, I'm fine with that. We have met and been talking about this. I just wanted to make sure council understood the Finance Committee has met and talked about this, and we all know that we have a local bank that we get an almost ridiculously low interest rate from, and I did contact them about that. And the fact is, we wouldn't be borrowing the full $400,000+. We only need part of what we need for the community center. We're now examining the bond issues. There were 2 of them that passed 10 years ago to finance the community center, to see if, because there is some unappropriated money sitting there, to see if we can use that and not even take out a loan. But we need the law director to weigh in on that, and hopefully that will happen in the next few days.
Great.
Okay, so we might not even be taking out a loan. If we do, we will probably go with a local bank and a better interest rate.
Phase 1 only.
Phase 1.
Phase 1 only, yes.
Great. And thanks for your work on this as well. One of the things that was mentioned in here that is separate from any of the improvements that are being proposed now is an analysis of our streetlights in the city and possibility for retrofitting those in the future. It's not something we'll get into now, but it's another item that we might look at as breaking out as a subsequent phase somewhere down the line as a place for us to save money and reduce our energy use as well.
I would point out that the streetlight technology is in transition right now with LED lighting. Most of our, I think Andy will speak to it later about the number of, I think not to steal some, the 300 streetlights that we actually own. The rest we do not, and it's a general unmetered fund. So the savings would have to be renegotiated for the AP, of course.
Right.
And again, as I'm aware that I've been following the LED lighting. I've bought some lousy bulbs that were very expensive and get great night lights as the technology gets improved. So I'm not impressed yet, at least on the home side, of residential LED lighting. So I'm hoping it will keep changing. So are you actually proposing the phases 1 and 2, or just 1 at this point?
Phase 1 by itself.
Okay.
Yeah. And sorry to add confusion, but I wanted to get the information out there about the total project size that is being examined.
Okay, no problem on that.
Including both.
Okay, I was just confused when I saw a new set of numbers, that's all.
A couple of questions on the terms that are used on the chart that's presented. So I'm looking at the last column in both phases 1 and the phases 1 and 2 that talks about the annual savings to payment ratio. And I'm assuming the higher number, the better, correct?
Yes.
So it's showing a significantly higher amount than for the community center, the savings on that. And then looking at another term, the third column from the far right-hand side says O&M savings. I'm assuming that's operations and maintenance savings, actual dollars per year saved.
That's correct.
Okay. So we're showing in the community center then a potential savings per year of $8,100. Parking garage then I see is the next highest one where we could potentially save several $1,000s a year with the lighting switch out.
Realize the lighting is on all the time at the parking garage. If we could even have on, motion detectors on even a fraction of them, better, more efficient lighting, it'd be an improvement.
Right.
We do realize that's a proprietary fund, so we have money coming in. We could just, so we have money to actually do the upgrades on this without having to take out a loan as much.
That was my other question,
Yes.
whether we would have the money to do it. And I think the lighting in the parking garage is critical, so I would think that would be really important.
And then that was one of the complications with proprietary funds, how to make the money change hands from one account to another. And I mean, the good thing is that we're completely flexible in terms of how we finance the different projects, as long as we have a way to do it. So we wouldn't be tied to taking a loan for all of it or anything. We could separate it out and pay for certain aspects of it through separate funds, getting a questioning.
Poker face. I just wanted to clarify, the only loan, is where a lot who was going, is for the community center.
Right.
Okay. And maybe not even for that, is what I'm hearing.
Depending on that debt service.
Depending on the debt service.
As Kathy mentioned.
Okay.
You walked in just right after we had a comment on that. So, awaiting word about the community center debt service to see if we can actually pay for this without a loan. And if we do get a loan, I believe, as was mentioned, very favorable rates and substantial energy savings. We will, depending on how quickly this shakes out, I will update the City Council. And are there any additional questions on this at the moment, Mayor?
So this is going to be up for first reading next week? Is that the intention?
Assuming that we have everything in place, I would like to bring it forward, yeah.
Okay.
For phase one only, as we've discussed.
And then work would be done when?
In terms of the timeline, I'm not familiar with the timeline.
As soon as we have an agreement with the city and financing is taken care of, however that is going to be done, we can start engineering almost immediately. Actual work in a building typically starts within 30 days of having the agreement in hand.
Great. All right, if I don't see any other questions, City Planner, do you need to weigh in on this? Or I know you're just here to answer questions if we have anything specific, but...
I don't have anything to add. I think you covered what I would have discussed.
Great.
Unless anybody has questions.
All right, well, thank you. And unless there's miscellaneous from anyone, that'll be the end of the Environment Committee.
And so then we'll move into Community Issues Committee, number 9.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. President. I'd like to introduce Lisa Camady, who's with us tonight, and to welcome her. And she is Director of Student and Community Engagement at Ohio University. And we have another guest joining us, who's Kevin Smith. He's the Interim Assistant Director of Leadership for Campus Life. And they're not asking for any money tonight, but what they are here to do is present some information to us. And this happened to come about because Michelle Draybold, who heads the Project Clean Committee, in one of the discussions at her earlier monthly meetings, we have the youngest guest ever here tonight, which is grand.
He aspires to be on council.
Oh, there you go. That's an early start. That's wonderful. Anyway, to continue with the introductions, Lisa Camady, Director of Student and Community Engagement, and Kevin Smith, who's the Interim Assistant Director of Leadership for Campus Life. And earlier this year, we were introduced to them as a result of having a discussion at a Project Clean meeting about community service kinds of activities, and wouldn't that be wonderful? And we made an appointment to see David Discutner, and he introduced us to Kevin and Lisa. And on that day, during that discussion, we learned that there's an extensive amount of community service taking place with Ohio University students in the Athens community. And at that point, Council President Bill Bias suggested that he thought it would be good to share this information with council members, and also by way of web streaming and the television, to also share it with the larger Athens community. So I'll turn it over to you. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for having us. First of all, I apologize for bringing my daughter, but she was persistent in coming, and this is so I apologize if she starts crying, but she just turned 1, so this is her birthday present. I couldn't think of anything better to get her. Thank you for inviting us here today. And the one thing, as I work in the Campus Involvement Center at Ohio University, and one of my responsibilities is the community service component. And I've done that for 4 years now. And one of the biggest things that we see with Ohio University students is their commitment to serve. It truly is remarkable. If you look at data from the students coming in, the incoming first-year students, it's remarkable how much they're invested in serving. And I don't think if I hold her, then, are people really looking at me? But the one thing that we see every year from students coming in is how much they want to serve our community. And actually, we see students wanting to serve more than what they might be able to do. All right? So we've taken a big initiative to focus on first-year involvement. And first-year involvement has actually gone up in 4% in the past year. We went from what was 7% of our student body to 11% in just 1 year in the past. And 1% of our students is quite a bit. If you think about it, we have 20,000 students, and to get 4,000 are first year. So to get 4% of those to go up in 1 year, when over the past 10 years, it's never gone beyond 6 or 7%. And so what we're noticing is that our students come in and they're really interested in serving, from the parents to anyone that comes in, no matter where they're from. We like to refer to them as Generation S, Generation Serve. And one of the things about that is trying to harness that power. So what we don't do so well at, or haven't done so before, is show how these students are always doing that. We have 350 student organizations, 32 Greek sororities and fraternities, and all of them are doing service out there. And to what extent? And so we started calculating what that actually looks like, and the Greek life alone does over 1,500 hours a year. And our student organizations and our service, just through our Community Service Leadership Council, and what we see from our student organizations, accounts for somewhere around 7,000 hours a year. Now, if you look at the national statistical data, there's a nonprofit that assigns a dollar figure to that. It's about $18 a service hour for this area of Ohio. So multiply that times $18, and you get quite an astonishing figure. And so what we do is one thing that you might notice recently, and you'll see the Campus Involvement Centers made quite a large impact, along with the Division of Student Affairs, in the local papers. And in fact, the Columbus Dispatch had the front page of Ohio University students serving in the plains. And with that, you'll see the Campus Involvement Center has started the Relief Initiative, and we did that with the Office of Dean of Students and the Division of Student Affairs. And what we did was we've channeled and coordinated all the students that have been calling in immediately as soon as the tornado or the tornado-like weather happened. But we noticed that so many students called in that we had to coordinate those efforts in some way, because we realized that the community, it can be overwhelmed by too many volunteers at one time. With a donation site and with the student volunteers, we've had over 500 volunteers sign up so far. We've collected almost $2,000 in funds just with that donation site alone. So it's one of those things that we're trying to get more information out there. We're trying to market it better, but the reality of it is our students are serving at a really large capacity, but we have over 85 community organizations, and it's very difficult to communicate that to a large group of people.
On my side of the house, I work with faculty who are potentially interested in participating in service learning, and that's an academic where it's included in their syllabus. And I joined University College staff a little over a year ago, with the focus being that we help our first-year students who participate in the learning communities. We have a couple of thousand students every year who participate in learning communities. University College is the largest incoming freshman class. We would like them to introduce them to service, but have it be a part of their exploration about what they would like to be as a major. So University College students are undecided, and all of the learning communities are focused around potential majors. This quarter I'm teaching two. One is Society and Art, the other one is Theater and Art. So for our service learning project, we'll be going to Arts West. We're going on a field trip on Thursday. We'll walk over there. And you can imagine there are a lot of challenges when you have several thousand students that you would like to become involved in a community. So we try to do it a little step at a time, whether it be 2 folks going over to the food pantry, 10 people going out to the dog shelter, which is actually a lot to go to the dog shelter at one time. Maybe these are individuals who are interested in science or biology. So we try and match their service with whatever it is they potentially want to major in. So that's been my focus this last year. I don't have a lot of data yet, since that's something that we're just beginning, and I've had a challenging year personally, but we're getting a little further with that, and we've had great response from instructors who do want to do service, and it's just a natural for the community as well. So we've done things like Pup People First, the Humane Society, the food pantries. They go all the way out to Lottridge. We do have some funding to help them with transportation. That's another issue that can be a problem for us to get classes of 20 out to a location. So walking distance is great. And those are just Good Earth Farm. So those are just a few of the places that we've been to recently.
Oh, I'm sorry, guys. Or crawling distance. That'd be good.
So thank you for this opportunity just to share with you some of the things that the university is working towards as far as involvement with the community.
Any questions?
So I guess, what do you need? Do you need more opportunities to plug in, or do you need assistance on any of that type of stuff? No?
Sure. I can't speak for Kevin, but yes, certainly we're always looking for opportunities where the students can go.
Okay.
Anywhere from 2 to 20. Most classes of these learning communities are in the fall, though we do have some in the spring and the winter, but the majority of the fall.
And this is one of my weak points. That's why I'm asking the question. Is usually how I think of projects and community services. Long duration. I have the concept: long duration, lots of activities; short duration. Or a blast of help, and then how does it wrap up with what their interests are? I mean, if they don't really know, then the idea of just filing papers would not do it for them, right?
Right.
So.
No. Well, for my part of it would be that they would do some work prior to seeing you. Say you were at, I don't know, whatever, say you were at Pup People First. Well, before they went there, we would do a little work with the instructor first, to the faculty member, to say, how do you feel about this, or what are your thoughts about whatever. Or a good one actually is serving at UCM, doing a dinner at UCM, because some of them have a lot of, they're a little cautious maybe. And then you do a little follow-up afterwards to see, and the instructor would build that in as far as the paperwork or the reaction, or that sort of thing. So from my side, it's more of an academic, and that's how it ties into what they're learning in that particular class. But for Kevin, mine is more of a one-time thing, unfortunately, where his is the long-term commitment.
Well, I mean, one thing from our perspective is just we have to coordinate our own structure internally. How do we communicate with community-based organizations? How do we communicate with our representatives and our students? At any one time, we could have 500 students want to volunteer, or we might have 10. And so how do you make commitments with that to community organizations that you want to actually support? So it's a two-way street, and so we realize that it's more about capacity building on our end, because there's certainly a lot of opportunities around there. And so it's really not a lot to do right now, but we're trying to find ways to do more work with the community organizations as they are.
Okay.
She's happy.
And there you have any contact points you want to relay to council or to us? I mean, I know where you find you.
Yeah, I mean, students or anyone can email us at community.service@ohio.edu, or they could go to our website at ohio.edu/involvement.
Okay.
A lot of people have been doing a lot of things. Hey! She is a citizen. Yeah, ohio.edu/community service or ohio.edu/involvement is the two main sites where people have been going for our site. You got to come back.
Any other questions? Okay. Well, thank you.
Thank you, Chris.
Lisa.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Dr. James had put together our city questionnaire on her classes before. Is that?
And I'm not sure if that was through, Dr. James has put together the city questionnaires.
Worked with her class. How many times?
About every other year. I think we're up to number 14 right now, and using clients. It's a different setup, kind of, so to speak. Dr. James' class does surveys, and they actually take on various clients. I think they're doing rural action this year.
Oh, okay.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Member Neisner, anything else?
No.
Okay. Planning and Development Committee. Public Works long-term infrastructure projects. Member Fall.
Tonight I would like to introduce Andy Stone, who will be talking about our long-term infrastructure projects, kind of Andy Stone's greatest wish list for the next few years. I also would like at this time to welcome to City Council members of the Planning Commission that came tonight. I think this is great because this helps to give Andy multiple input into what he sees as his long-term goals and objectives for infrastructure.
What do you think?
And I'd like to take this time to say thank you to City Administration and particularly to Andy Stone about the roundabout project. There were a whole lot of naysayers, And I was really happy to see that some of the naysayers actually wrote letters to the editor saying that they were wrong, and I think that it's been a really wonderful project. So I want to say thanks to Andy for really taking the bull by the horns on that, and seeing it through and kind of...
We really did draw on the back of a napkin and we'll build it. We really put some thought into it, believe it or not, but thank you very much, Chris.
I think that it's going to be really good.
I think so, too.
I think it's worked out really well so far, so thank you.
I'm going to do my best. I know I'm not mic'd right here, but to hand out these presentations, I don't have to state them. I got it back to front in order to save on paper. That's important. You have two also. The color version, forgive me, is up on the screen. And this is the black and white version. The slides are two slides per set, or 2 slides per page, and then there's a couple pages that are large, full pictures, but for the most part, it's 2 pages per slide. Correction, 2 slides per page. Okay, thanks. Okay, and Paul is going to change slides for me while we do that. I'll give him the next slide when we get ready to go. This is the multi-year capital improvements concept briefing. Many of you have seen, or some of you have seen, this document, which is a pretty complicated thing to stick up there on the screen or to hand out to everybody and try to absorb in a setting. So what I tried to do is boil this down into a few slides, 24 slides specifically, to take about 15 or 20 minutes to talk you through the next 8 or so years of what I see as capital improvements, major capital improvement projects needs. As you have questions during the presentation, by all means, just stop me and ask it, or you can write it down and wait to the end. Either way. Slide. This is the purpose, to just give you a snapshot of the infrastructure we have, and then to kind of give you the multi-year capital improvements plan of where we're going. Slide. I think I got it. Here's our agenda. I'll go over the amount of infrastructure we have and how we are organized to maintain it, kind of our decision making, and where I go at least, and when I look at which we should do first, what item we should do first based on the funds available. Then we'll talk the multi-year capital improvement plan itself and kind of look geographically where they all are across the city. Talk a little bit about ongoing maintenance, annual paving, which a lot of you have seen my philosophy on annual paving, but then also something that this body asked me to do last spring was to look at a way that we could do some type of annual sidewalk rehabilitation program. And I have a few slides in here to talk about a way to utilize both our code as well as the ORC required assessment procedures should you want to require property owners to repair their sidewalks in some sort of systematic manner. Just talk in closing about some big picture considerations as we move forward, things to think about, and then lastly, I know you're going into the 2011 budget, and I wanted to give you the major local outlays, not necessarily grant funds, because when the time comes to do the appropriation, you'll be appropriating both the local funds as well as the grant funds, but to talk about specifically local money and what you're going to see go out in 2011 for these major capital improvements projects. Slide. Here's an overview of how much we have. And a lot of people really don't think about everything that's in the city of Athens, but this is what we have to take care of. We have over 194 lane miles. That doesn't count alleys, but that counts our 2-lane, 3-lane, and 4-lane, and 5-lane, for that matter, roads. We have over 410,000 feet mapped of water line. There probably is more out there, but we know definitively we have that. We have over 399,000 feet of sanitary sewer. That is sanitary main, not counting people's laterals. We know we have over 80,000 feet of storm line mapped. We know there's a lot more storm line out there that we just don't have mapped right now. I would estimate we're closer to 300,000 feet of storm line around the city. Curb and sidewalk, many of our roads are curbed, some of them are not. It's really unknown. The sidewalk linear footage is a work in progress, and I'll talk about that a little bit later in the presentation on a project that Paul Logue and I are working on. Bridges, We have 10 bridges in the city. I have on here 5 major and 3 to 5 minor. The reason that I say 3 to 5 is because a couple of those, ODOT considers them a bridge because they're greater than 10 foot in span. There are 2 structures on Richland Avenue south of Hooper Street. However, in the grand scheme of things, they're really just a box culvert. But because ODOT considers them a bridge, there's really 10. But we really have 5 major bridges that we take care of in the city, and then 3 minor bridges we take care of in the city. 1 water plant on West State Street, 1 wastewater plant on East Park Drive, 45 remote sites, and these are a lot of the things that people don't think about. These include all of our reservoirs around the city. Those are our large in-ground reservoirs, our water towers, our lift stations around the city, our pump stations around the city, pressure reducing valves around the city. These are significant parts of our infrastructure and our water and wastewater system that a lot of times we don't think about. Traffic signals. We have 36 traffic signals. Used to have 37 until we just removed 1 here as part of the Richland 682 project. We have over 300 city-owned street lights. These are primarily on Court Street, University Estates, Richland Avenue in the vicinity of the new intersection and bridge, the 5033 bypass, and the Blackburn Woods subdivision. Those are where we own our street lights, and then beyond that, there's probably this many again in AEP-owned or ODOT-owned street lights that we pay rent for, or a portion of the electric bill in AEP's case, in ODOT's case, but in AEP's case, we pay them rent, a flat fee for the typical Cobra headlights you see on poles. And then lastly, there's a series of other buildings and guardrail and signs and vehicles that are across the spectrum. So there's a lot to take care of in the city of Athens with regards to public works. Slide. All right, this is a snapshot out of my annual report. It was in there in the 2009 annual report. I won't get too in-depth in this, but basically in the Engineering and Public Works Department, there's 56 full-time employees, 1 part-time employee, and 4 to 10 seasonal employees, depending on the year and what we've got laid on for the summer. We got it pretty much broken into an administrative staff. A lot of the project management happens in that administrative staff world at my office at 30 Kern Drive. An operational staff, and that's broken into streets, wastewater, water maintenance, sewer maintenance, and then instrumentation. And then there's a quality control staff, which is our lab, which is our honest brokers to ensure that what we tell we're serving the residents or what we say that we're putting into the river is actually what we are. Slide. All right, decision criteria. This is what we talk about, or this is what the factors that go into making decisions about large-scale capital improvements. And when I look 5 years out, 8 years out, 10 years out, and we look at what we're going to do now, right away, versus what we're going to hold off and go on down the road, these are the considerations. Age and condition. There are some pieces of infrastructure in this city that are very old, but are also in very good shape considering their age. For instance, the Oxbow Bridge is due for a significant rehab, but it's 78 years old, whereas the Richland Avenue Bridge over the Hocking was only 40 years old before it was due for an overall. And so just because something is older doesn't necessarily mean it's in worse shape, though in a lot of cases that is a pretty good indication. Number of citizens served. If we've got a large arterial or a major water line or major sewer line that serve a lot more people than a smaller one, that one needs to take precedence when it comes. It also, in a lot of cases, costs more. But when you wonder about why is East State Street in better shape than, say, for instance, Townsend, as far as the pavement condition, 28,000 vehicles a day versus 600 vehicles a day are the reason why. Criticality, impact of failure specifically. If we lose a particular item, is that item going to really hamper us? I.e., the high service pumps at the water plant, if those go down, I cannot move water to the city, and we're going to start going dry after about a day or so in different places. Compared to, say, a small lift station off of 56 that we might have a sewage overflow in a small area, but we can function for a longer time if it fails. So that's something that we consider. Mandates, I'm talking about EPA. These are findings and orders. Oftentimes, and in the past, particularly on the wastewater side, you will get a series of mandates from EPA. Right now, we're under one. It's not necessarily a finding or order per se, but it's a quote, strongly encouraged letter to rehab our wastewater treatment plant, and it could turn into an order here very soon if we didn't take action. So oftentimes outside agencies will come and say, I'm sorry, you have to do something about this, and we're not going to give you any money for it, but you just have to do something. And unanticipated events. A good example of this would be in 2007, the Mulligan Road slip. For those of you who remember, had some significantly heavy rains in that time, had a water line let loose, and then we lost part of Mulligan Road. Those are things we don't anticipate, but they're a $75,000, $85,000, $100,000 dollop just kind of out of the blue, and they jump into the equation. Executive and legislative priority. He obviously sets my priorities, and you set my priorities as far as what we do. You know, I'll give you my recommendations, but when it comes down to it, the elected officials are the ones that drive what we need to do here in the city. And then lastly, cost and grant focus. We know we can't do things that we can't afford. We try to do the most that we can with the money we have. Also, as we kind of piece this thing together, I look at what grants are most likely to be able to are we most likely to be competitive on for particular projects, and then go after those. And in a lot of cases, you look at the formula by which they determine if you're going to be funded or not, and say, this project probably could be funded, this project probably can't. So we're really going to try to put this and this together to go after this project because we know it can be funded. Slide. All right, this is kind of the preface slide for the following ones that show the numbers and the geographic area of the various projects over the coming years. The numbers shown are in thousands, so just know that. I didn't put dollar signs up there. I didn't put a bunch of zeros, and they're roughly rounded to the nearest thousand. They're approximations, particularly when we go forward, because in a lot of cases, pre-planning, pre-design, you don't know what things are going to cost. I would say they're close on the order of magnitude, but I would tell you that they could change after you get into design on a particular project. When we talk about the numbers, these are from multiple funds. I just talk about local money and I talk about outside money, and these are from Street Fund, Wheel Tax Fund, State Highway Fund, Street Rehab Fund, Capital Improvements Fund, Water Fund, Sewer Fund. So this is kind of across the spectrum. I can get way down into the weeds if you ever want to come see me, and we can go through this thing. But for this presentation, it includes all of those. Our local share is captured as both cash and in kind in a lot of grants, particularly some that are coming up, State Issue 1, this recreational trails grant we have coming up. I've got a significant portion of our local effort is going to be in kind support, so our guys working on it. So it isn't necessarily all cash. Of note, under this particular bullet, I've got a couple notations here as you go through the following slides. Either these three asterisks or this on the maps, the red outlined stars. These are denotes the street rehab levy is critical in funding the particular project that I'm highlighting in partial or in whole. These are ones we've already done or ones we're planning. And this is this levy that is coming up here on the ballot in November, which is the 0.1%. We've had it in place for 10 years. We're looking to get it in place for another 10 years. And in 2011, it'll be an overlap year should it pass here in November. But as I'm going forward, I'm assuming that will pass because it is absolutely critical to us to be able to continue to maintain our infrastructure the way we've been doing. Loans, I'm considering local cash. Those are kind of hard to capture. I realize we would spread those and over time, but I'm just considering those as cash because it's not an outside funding source. And then a couple things that aren't reflected on here. Annual paving areas. In a lot of cases, those do indeed use the street rehab funds. I would say probably 80% of our annual paving comes out of the 572 fund, and that $570,000 to $600,000 a year that come in via the street rehab money. I'm not including annual in-house water and sewer line installations. These are ones that our staff does. We just go out and take up an existing line and put in a new one. It doesn't require a significant amount of engineering. Design doesn't require a contractor to come in because they're relatively shallow lines, something we can do in between breaks. But we did a number this year. We did some over by Dairy Queen off of Lancaster Street. We did one up in the North Point subdivision. So these are things like that are not reflected in these following slides. The in-house breaks and repair, and then the annual sidewalk rehab, which I'll talk about as we get close to the end. there's a tremendous amount of work that goes on in the operational budget, the things that aren't part of those TC 500s that I'm talking about here, the things that are in the 300 and 200s that you just put in your annual budget that aren't even captured here in running and maintaining that infrastructure of the city, as well as our annual programs, our annual paving, or our annual water line or sewer line replacements. I'm really just highlighting key capital improvement projects. Slide. All right, the way I've structured this is you see the years flowing down the left, and then you see the project names, the local funds, the outside funds, local funds, outside funds, and then the total. Local funds could be any one of those series of fund lines that I named earlier, and outside funds would be different types of grants. This goes back, and these are things we've done over the last 5 years, really since 2005. They don't necessarily exactly line up with this year, and as we move forward, you're going to find that projects won't exactly line up with the year that I'm showing them kind of beside, because many projects are multiple years. But this gives you the general window of when this project occurred. And then on your copies of this presentation, you can see that the stars, as far as the locations in the city where this particular project occurred, corresponds with the tabulated list. And when I change the slide, people in the audience will see. But each page that you have, those two go together. The big thing that you can see here, if you look down at the totals, is over the last 5 years we brought in about $4.7 million of outside funds leveraged against our 2.9 of local funds. So we're looking at about 62% of the infrastructure improvements on major capital improvements, not our annual paving, not our annual water line repairs, but on our major capital improvements we're coming from the outside sources, and then a 38% from our inside. So over these last 5 years, and this does include the Richland project, which I'll capture in the next one. That's a big chunk of money into the city. So over from 2005 to 2009, we're looking at about $7.6 million we've put in major capital improvements. Slide. Okay, this is that list that you saw on the slide before. All the ones that are identified in the red, with the red outline, are ones that we've done, that we've used a portion or all of the street rehabilitation levy money revenue in order to do, and many of those were our local match. A lot of the ones along Columbus Road here were in the 2008 time frame after we had the large, or 2007, 2008 time frame after we had the large flooding incident where we had the sewer line slide into the river. We put in a new sewer lift station, a new force main on Columbus Road, also a new water line, a new ARC grant funded pump station on Columbus Road, so that's the reason why you see a lot of that along Columbus Road. This also, the sunset slips are captured on here. And then on here is also captured the East State Street bike path extension, which is the second of those that we've done. We did another one a few years prior, which continued on from the community center on down to the end of the East State Wyden area, and then this year, or correction, in 2007, we extended another 1.5 miles on down to Holzer Clinic. Slide. All right, these are current improvements. These are things that we are currently in execution on. Of note, you've not committed all the money to these projects here yet, but you've committed at least some. So we're kind of down the road on these, and we kind of don't want to turn around on these, and in most cases we won't. Of note on here, the real big one, and this is the one that we always talk about, these are our Richland 682 project, and this is the big success story of where a certain amount of local funds then provide, a huge amount of exterior funds. We're able to match that 80-20 match on a lot of those ODOT grants. As you move down, these are other things that we're doing right now. We are out to bid for the salt storage facility upgrade at the service garage. This is to protect our wellhead. The Raritan-Verona sidewalks is an outreach of the Safe Routes to Schools program. We have the bids in. We're getting ready to award those. And by the way, we have to adjust the authorization, and that'll go through next Monday in order to meet the way the bids came back in. But $83,000 of that will come back to us from ODOT after we complete the project to build a new sidewalk on Raritan and a new sidewalk on Verona, and the raised intersection on Morris and Wallace specifically is included in that, and that came in a lot higher than we estimated. But it's important. The brine lagoon improvements, these are, again, to protect our wellhead, places where our chlorides are leaking out of our brine lagoon at our water treatment plant. We want to keep them out of our groundwater, so that's going on currently. The digester concrete repair, that's typically I would consider that just an annual maintenance, but I wanted to capture it on here because we're going to show that we are putting effort into that wastewater treatment plant. And that was a $50,000 improvement we made this year. And then two projects that are right in the works right now. One is in design. That's the Mill Street sewer. That's to replace the 2 or 3 or 4, depending where you are on Mill Street, sanitary sewer mains. With one large main that will not collapse and cause sinkholes like the other ones have been doing, have a lot less I&I. So this will be a good project that we're going to use 2 years of CDBG funds in order to do, and this will be a 2011 construction. And then the North Court Sanitary and Storm Project, that will also include the last little section of brick replacement that we need to do right there at the end, and then we'll be completely done with our Court Street streetscape. But that solves a problem. Should we get funded under Issue 1, which the mayor and I have pretty strong belief that we will, that is a project that will go next summer also, and take some sanitary sewer that we know is going into our storm right now, going directly to the Hocking River, and we'll fix that. We'll fix a section of storm sewer, and then we'll replace those bricks and create a nice aesthetically pleasing streetscape. Slide. This shows you those projects that are up there that are currently in execution at the moment. The big one obviously being Richland 682, and again, these 3 right here are the 3 that have street rehab dollars incorporated into them. Slide. All right, this is going forward. Of note, that red line denotes where the projects that are above that red line are projects that we have the outside funding secured. I know where they're coming from. Specifically, the Northwest Bike Path Extension Phase 1. This is the Recreational Trails Grant for $132,000 that we just got awarded the other day. The Circle Drive improvements is an ARC access road grant. The Carriage Hill Bridge replacement, while it doesn't incorporate outside funds, we can use it later as a credit towards our local match for a larger bridge project, and that larger bridge project is the Oxbow Bridge rehab, which is targeted to go in 2012 summer, and that is identified of up to $2.5 million in ODOT funds at an 80-20 match. Right now, those are my estimates, what we're showing. Everything below that run line are, I don't want to say my wish list, but these are what I'm forecasting. I don't necessarily have grants lined up or outside funding sources lined up for these, but we're going to try. And if you look at our historical success in lining up these outside grants, I would say we're not too far off when we consider it. Of note, when you look at the big rocks from 2011 through 2015, one of the very biggest rocks is going to be the wastewater treatment plant improvements. We're probably looking at a $6 million project to get that wastewater treatment plant up to a modern plant. And Paula thinks I'm smoking something when I have $3 million of inside funds and $3 million of outside funds, but I'm going to try. We're going to try to find various funding sources and talk to our state reps, our national congressional reps, Corps of Engineers, USDA, and try to work a funding package that will support that. And if we can't, then we'll just go borrow it. But the goal would be to try to get that half funded from the outside. Another big rock, when you look at this, and there are 2 on here, and they could kind of be interchangeable, kind of based on the view of what's more important to the city, are 2 other arterials that we haven't put a huge amount of effort in recently, and those are Columbus Road and Richland Avenue south of Dairy Lane. Right here we've got identified a Columbus Road and Lancaster waterline, paving, sidewalks, and then Columbus Road improvements in general, which would include repaving, probably a widening similar to Pomeroy Road where we installed bike lanes or wide shoulders for pedestrians and cyclists. There's that project, and then there's also a Richland South project to deal with drainage, pavement, sidewalks, curbs south of Dairy Lane. So those are 2 arterials that right now I have them ordered in a 2013 and a 2015 window, but could easily flip based on the what this body and what the administration believes are more important. Another big rock that is on here, and I just wanted to put it up here for your visibility, is right here around number 15 on 2015, US 3350 Stimson and East State interchange. And I got 0 local funds, but I got $7 million of outside funds. And this would not necessarily be my project, but we would be the main customer. ODOT right now is in the very planning stages of an interchange modification study for the East State Street and the Stimson Avenue interchange. We know there are some safety issues with the Stimson Avenue interchange. There are some congestion issues with the East State interchange, and with the completion of the Nelsonville bypass and the bridge in Parkersburg, ODOT believes that traffic is going to increase significantly in that area, and they're actually going to do a modification study and then apply for track funding, which is the large over $5 million funding sources out there for major transportation projects. And so I would see that happening in kind of the 2015 timeframe if ODOT does indeed, if they're successful in that. And we in Ohio University obviously are the biggest users, so we're going to be a big part of that. All right, slide. All right, 2011 through 2015, this is just a geographic representation of that tabulated chart to see where everything lies around the city. Again, the stars that have the red lines around them are the projects that I envision having that street rehab money, that $570,000 to $600,000 a year, come in to be partial or all of the funding on. Also of note over here, I don't have this in any particular spot. We need to do a citywide telemetry upgrade, and this is both on the water side and the wastewater side. We have radios that are pretty old. We were really at the cutting edge back in 1990 or the late 80s when we went to a radio telemetry system, and at this point the technology has outpaced us, and we're really looking to have to get ourselves into a out of the VHF band into a 900 megahertz band on those radios, and I've got a vision for doing that. But that's not necessarily geographical because it's all over the city. All right.
And Andy,
yeah.
If I may interrupt.
Sure.
And the telemetry would be for specifically what would be the advantage?
The telemetry is a series of radios that we use to run our remote sites. Those 45 remote sites I was talking about, both the water reservoirs, towers, pump stations, and the sewage lift stations around the city. From the plants, we can control those, turn them on, turn them off, monitor them, see about someone breaking into them. But it's mainly in order to operate the system, shut off a portion of the system if there's a break. And we used to do this with a series of telephones and bells and 2 soup cans on the ends of string and sending guys out to do it. And then in 90 they put in this radio system. Right now we're in the VHF spectrum. And and we could get way into detail on this, but the band, the FCC is going to narrow banding, where they're cramming the spectrum full, and we're running out of space in the spectrum, and we're getting more and more interference. We had a big interference problem all during 2009 from Malta, believe it or not, the village of Malta's telemetry system, and it's because they had the same frequency as us. And they thought, they're 38 miles away. How could they affect you? But they did. So we need to go to a different band, a lower power band, 900 megahertz, and we need to upgrade this system. And that's something I see needing to happen here in the next 5 years.
Part of the reason why this happens is realize if there's a break and a reservoir starts emptying out like real quick, this telemetry will tell you that. And the system right now cycles fairly slowly right now, so you could actually have a lot of things going on before it comes back and says, it's still water in the reservoir, and which valves to shut off or which pumps to turn on. So that's one of the issues right there. It's a slower system. And think about your computer in the 90s, how fast it went compared to today.
There's just a lot more people in the world, and the equipment's getting old also.
But they would continue to use radio, right?
Yeah, we would continue to use radio. I think that it's important to us that we stay with a radio-based system, one that we can power with backup power. Number one, number two, ones that aren't on and some type of outside internet provider or outside phone provider.
So, yeah, versus digital, radio versus digital, or
well, radio versus like an internet-based or something where we would have to rely on the infrastructure of Time Warner, for instance, or something like that. I think that the radio is really the way to go.
Thank you for explaining that.
Yeah. Slide. All right, this is moving way forward here, and this is looking further out. 2016 through 2018, a lot of times it's hard to get our head around stuff that far out, considering everything we got going on in the interim. But some of the large things that I see happening, and one of these was reflected on the previous slide. It's also reflected here because I see it as a multi-year project, is in-ground reservoir repairs. Most of our reservoirs in the city, Hope, Kimes, Curtis, Highland, were built in the 1930s, and they're big tanks in the ground, and it would make sense to get in and do some major repairs to those. So that's a major thing I see needing to happen sometime a little bit further out. East end water line, this is the far east end, increasing fire flow. A lot of those water lines are old. And another thing that I have on here is a water plant upgrade. And these are just items that we know need to happen. They're not something that need to happen next year, but I've got them on here for the 2016 through the 2018, and I'm sure there will be other things that will come up in the meantime. Slide. All right, these are those things that are on that last presentation, geographically represented. Significant areas that I didn't capture in these last few slides are based on this. We've known this for a long time. The tornado recently kind of drove it home. We need to do some generator upgrades for our remote sites and our ability to power portions of the city when we have outages for extended periods of time. Stormwater projects, most specifically flash flooding, not necessarily riverine flooding, but flash flooding. And I know that we've got some flash flooding issues on Richland Avenue. I know we have some flash flooding issues on Columbus Road. What our role is versus what our private property owners' roles are in question, but I know that at some point we need to do projects. Future Safe Routes to Schools projects. Two things that aren't reflected on here are the 2011 Safe Routes to Schools projects, specifically the additional sets of stairs we've talked about doing, just because we don't have the go-ahead from ODOT on that yet. And then other potential safe routes to schools, because that I could see going away completely, or I could see that being a funding source for a number of years. We were very successful in getting our front-end stuff funded, so we want to try to keep going after that. Slide. Annual paving. Any of you who've gone on a street tour have seen this slide before. This is just my philosophy on how we do paving annually. I don't see paving necessarily as a major capital improvement project, although we do track it out of our TC 500 money. It's something that we do design in-house, and then every year we do a spring pavement analysis and decide where we need to spend our paving dollars for the year. We can't pave everything, so we try to target the two ends of the spectrum. Things that are absolutely far gone, and then try to do preventive maintenance on things that are in pretty good shape. And utilities I kind of see as being the same way. Slide. In 2004, we started with a 0 to 100 scale. This is when I came on board and how I was rating all our streets in the city, and my staff was. We changed this recently to a 0 to 10 system because we found the 0 to 100 system just didn't work for us. It was too complicated. It just didn't meet our needs. We didn't need something that complex. And then with our considerations, besides the stress, we consider traffic, we consider utilities. I won't pave a street that's in bad shape if I know I got to replace utilities underneath of it. And I'm getting my arms around that a lot more so in the last 2 years than I did before when I was just in the street world. Slide. Okay, I want to talk briefly about the annual sidewalk rehabilitation. This body asked me last spring to kind of come up with a method to systematically repair sidewalks and then assess adjacent property owners should they decide not to do it themselves and not have the opportunity to do it themselves using the ORC specified assessment procedures. Slide. All right, you have a pretty big, and in your packet it's not really good, but you can see it here on the screen a lot better. This is work that Paul has done, and Paul has been doing some great work on this. With city volunteers as well as city staff, we've been walking and categorizing sidewalks all around the city to say what their condition are. We're using a green, amber, red, black system, very subjective, as opposed to the counting the number of cracks or looking at the distance of offset of a particular crack. We just said, hey, is it good? Is it in decent shape? If I close my eyes, do I feel uncomfortable walking on it? That's our criteria for poor. And then is there no sidewalk? It's black. This is what we'll use for that network level analysis once we get everything done to go and say, okay, we're going to do this section this year, this section next year, this section next year. Slide. All right, this is a busy slide, and I'll let you digest it kind of on your own, but the takeaway from this is utilizing the experience of the Carpenter Street project, where we went through assessment procedures for the sidewalk portion of that. Debbie graciously provided me all of the documentation, both legislation as well as other documentation that had to happen to do an assessment proceeding. If you look up here, there's a couple pieces of legislation that may or may not happen, depending on if property owners appeal or not. But this is 1 year, and the way it would happen is we identify the area we're going to do this year, we go out and prepare plans and a survey and make the estimates, and then this body passes a resolution of necessity to say we're going to do it. Property owners are sent letters. Those property owners have the option of repairing the section on their own, or appealing, or just letting us go forward with it. If they appeal, you got to do the Equalization Review Board, which we went through with Carpenter Street. We go forward with bidding and construction. We do a post-construction actual cost, and then eventually you pass the ordinance levying the assessment, and letters and final bills are set. If we can get this into the county by, I believe, like 11 September or 15 September, it'll end up on property taxes for the following year. More people can pay that immediately. Slide. Again, something you can go and study in more detail on your own, because I know that they want me to go fast here. This is a tale of three property owners. This kind of gives you an example of three parcels, 50-foot in frontages of each. Here's our sidewalks assessment, or I'm sorry, not assessment, but our canvas to say what the condition is, the section that we're going to replace, the red section that we're going to replace for each property, and then the estimated cost, the actual cost, and how it would be parceled out for that particular section. So how it would be split out for a particular section of street. Slide. All right, a couple considerations as we go forward with this. If this is something that you would like to move forward with, the order and priority. What's the most important? What area of the city? Do we do it based on where the most red is? Do we do it on where the most foot traffic is? When we get this overall thing done, where do we say we're going to start? And because this is the justification of, if you're going to assess me, why don't you assess that guy? Because his sidewalk is worse. Well, we're going to get to him, but we're starting on this area. So which area we start on? What we do with sections where there are no sidewalks. In recent history, we've had a circumstance where we did an assessment to build a sidewalk where there was none on Stewart Street. We also had a circumstance where we just built it outright on Ohio Avenue. So we have both precedents in that particular case. We're utilizing SRTS right now, the Safe Routes to Schools program, where we can, where that program will fund it, specifically on Raritan and Verona. But do we want to do assessment for locations where there are no sidewalks? Curbs, ADA ramps, all of these are things that we've historically paid for out of city funds and never assessed anybody on that. And I believe we need to continue to do that because it serves everybody. And then lastly, revenue capture over time. Every time you got to do this, it requires seed money annually. I've been saying a $50,000 to $75,000 a year. Some would be recouped in the same year if people paid immediately. Some would come in over 10 years' time, because if it's put on property taxes, it trickles in and it goes into the general fund, and then you have to decide whether or not you want to transfer it back into that. So you might not get it all back at once should you decide to go down this road. But it's not necessarily something we have to do, but it is a way that we can put teeth to our code that says property owners are supposed to repair sidewalks. Because historically we've said that, but then when you really push the issue, unless you follow the ORC assessment procedures, because we're a statutory city, you can't get them, you can't make them do it according to our code. Okay, slide. We'll get this wrapped up. Some general big picture considerations on all capital improvements as we go forward. I've already talked about it about 18 times through here, but I see that 0.1% street rehab levy is critical to passing. We've got a couple of opportunities here this fall, again in the spring, and again next fall. This will shoot a big thing in the foot if it goes down. So I would really ask that as you talk to people that we push to get that passed. Sewer rates, part of the wastewater treatment plant improvements project is going to be a really detailed look at our current sewer debt, our current sewer rates, and costs of what we want to do both at the plant and also at different places around the city. And we want to look at sewer rates over time. And I'm not talking about improvements to get us to the next 3 years. I'm talking about improvements or a glide path for the next 30 years of how we need to deal with sewer. Stormwater utility, we're going to get an MS4 designation. That's a, I don't know if I can't remember what MS4 stands for, but basically it means
Municipal separate sewer system.
Yeah, stormwater sewer system, yeah.
Municipal separate stormwater
sewer system.
The four S's.
Yeah, the four S's. It's an EPA requirement that requires you to get an NPDES permit, National Pollutant Discharge Elimination System permit, like we have for our wastewater plant, for our storm system in the city. So it requires a series of steps, both legislative as well as kind of administrative, that we have to do to enforce that. If that designation comes down, and right now it's in limbo according to the EPA, but it's coming. So a potential stormwater utility going forward, assessments, when and why we do them, when we think they're necessary, and then lastly, regionalization. I would encourage all of us to think broader than just the city of Athens at its boundary. For instance, ODOT is going to come in and look at the 5033 series of interchanges because of the Nelsonville bypass, because of the Blennerhassett Bridge in Parkersburg, and it does impact us because it's right in our city, but it really is a much larger system, and we're part of a larger system. And I would ask you all to think regionally as we go forward. Slide. All right, last thing, 2011 appropriations. These are the expectations that you probably should walk away with. I'm going to come asking you for $150,000 of local money to fund the Mill Street sewer. This is in addition to the $150,000 for the CDBG, or I'm sorry, CDBG money, a couple of years of CDBG money, that you appropriate that as well, but this is our local funds. The North Court infrastructure, $65,000 on local funds, should we get that grant. The Oxbow Bridge, right now we've been authorized to expend some from 2009 budget, or correction, 2010 budget. 2011, I see another $100,000 of local money in order to get that $2.5 million on down the road. Carriage Hill Bridge, we want to do that in 2011. That would be local money. I don't see it costing all $200,000, but it might. Circle Drive, we're looking at probably $35,000 in local on top of the $400,000 ARC and $65,000 that's already been put forth for the project. And annual paving, annual water line repair, the front end of the wastewater treatment plant design, and I don't have a firm number on that yet. That's what I included in there. And then I put a $50,000 amount in there for this sidewalk rehab program. Obviously, we will adjust those and sharpen the pencil and get way down to the details as we go forward in 2011 budgets. But those are things in the big rocks in long-term capital improvements. That's my presentation for this evening. Hopefully I didn't take too much of your time. What are your questions?
Thank you, Mr. Stone. I'm guessing, Andy, that this 2011 the expectations list is not in order of importance there.
It's not in order of importance,
okay.
No. As it came to me when I was writing the slide presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Stone. Very comprehensive look at what we're going to need to be looking at in the next few years, and I appreciate it. This is one of the great benefits of creating your position here at the city, I think, is looking at all the systems together, and it's clear to me that it's really helping us get a lot more done with our resources, and I appreciate that. I had a couple of questions here. One is, when would the MS4 designation come down the pike, and when would we have, if we are designated, and when do we need to start getting ready for that?
The most recent word we got from the EPA was that they thought late summer, and then late summer came and went, and Aaron Wolf, who's our regulator on surface water from the Southeast District, said, central office still has it, there's been some personnel changes, you may or may not get designated this year. The very first thing that we would have to do is pass some legislation. This legislation would be similar to our wellhead protection ordinance, but it would be talking about stormwater protection instead. Both Paul Logue and me and John Paskey, the three of us, have been looking at the kind of example legislation that EPA puts out and been trying to Athenize it, and make it fit our system. It's not a earth-shattering thing. A lot of the things are things we do already, are things that fit into other components. Stormwater pollution prevention with construction projects, where you put up, silt fence and best practices to keep silt runoff during construction. Not dumping motor oil down the drain, things that people would get in, or down a storm sewer, things that people would get in trouble for anyway. It's just, putting it on the books. That's kind of the first part of it. I see the enforcement of it taking place the very same way or very similarly to the way that we do wellhead protection. That is to say, we have a team, we meet every couple weeks, and we review issues, and we go out and do periodic patrols of our various storm outlets and try to trace back problems to their source. So.
I've been attending some, like the Ohio Municipal League, and some of these cities are already tripped and they have to do this. They've already been legislated in because of population or conditions. Some cities don't have to do it at all because they treat all the water, stormwater and sanitary sewer water, in the same plant, which would be not the other way to go, which is not where we want to go.
A lot of money.
Realize that the Planning Commission level right now, we're looking at lot coverage, total lot coverage. With that idea, we can look at permeable versus impermeable surfaces. Because really, this is part of the picture. And realize that we do not have, some areas of the city do not have really a storm sewer system in place. So there are aspects that we're looking at all the time.
We are fortunate that we are pretty much separated. There are many, many cities in southeast Ohio that have combined sewer, and they're stuck, especially the big ones along the river, where they just put everything into one sewer, and then they treat millions and millions and millions of gallons a day, and they pump it through their system, and it costs a lot of money. And we've been to the city of Ironton and looking at their system. They're under a $25 million 17-year plan to get their system separated. So we're fortunate in that regard that somebody had the foresight in 1950 or whatever to build a sewer around the city and start to capture the sanitary sewage separately. Now, I'm not saying we're there, because a lot of our sanitary system still has a lot of stormwater getting into it, but we're better off than a lot of people.
Great, thank you.
Chris? Just a comment and then 3 questions. One, to thank you for the report. It's really helpful, I think, for us to have this bigger picture, especially as we approach the budgeting season. One of them has to do with a comment on the $50,000 of local money for sidewalks. That's on your current slide that's still up here. Does that tie to an earlier slide? Is this for curbs and ADA? Or is that for our portions, or is this the $50,000 that will get the process started?
This would be the $50,000, I think, that would get the process started. I would ask for this as a separate appropriation, not part of the annual budget. Historically, this body's put about $50,000 into curbs and sidewalks, the line, as part of the annual budget, which we've used to do ADA ramps in various locations, used to do curb reimbursement program. When citizens go and have concrete work done and their curbs failing, we'll reimburse them for doing the curbs. This would be kind of a separate, and I learned my lesson last year about putting project money into the annual budget, because I still got to come back and ask for authorization anyway, so we might as well just go for a different appropriation. So this would be a different appropriation for that project.
Okay. Second question has to do with reservoirs, and that was in the earlier part of the presentation, and I noticed that it was listed on several of the slides, and one of them was looking at long range for, I think, out in 2013. And I'm wondering, as with some of this, I'm assuming that if something, if we needed to bump up some of the improvements.
Paul, would you go back a few slides?
It would be back to slide 4 that has the heading amount of infrastructure.
Keep going. Slide.
Oh, wait a minute. It's not that back that far.
I'll get you there.
Sorry.
2013 time frame. Keep going. One more, right there.
Okay.
Yeah, it's captured there. It's number 14 on here, and I've got 1.5 million in local funds. That would not be 1.5 million in 2014. That would be spread over time. And it might not cost that much. I see that as a cost for replacement of our reservoirs at a couple locations, and then I've got it subsequently with a phase 2 on down the road. I think we could get away with a significant sealing project. There's a lot of technology out there today that allows you to rehab in place and seal in place as opposed to completely rip out of the ground and build new.
Okay. So if we begin to look at that, it might happen earlier than that and over a progressive.
Yeah, and I see it kind of like we did our Brine Lagoon this year, in that we did kind of a preventive process as opposed to just completely rip it out and do away with it.
Okay.
But our reservoirs are old, and they are big, and they are on tops of hills with millions of gallons of water in them. So.
Yeah. And my last question is about your comment about regionalization, to keep in mind that we're part of a bigger picture, that we have the Nelsonville bypass going in, and we have the new Belpre Bridge. Do we have any estimates from the state, and I'm looking at it, I think from the kind of planning perspective and growth that Athens might experience, do we have any projections from the state as an increased amount of traffic, increased population, that kind of thing that might result because of this? I mean, just as, when the traffic lights, when the highways went in between Columbus and Lancaster grew and became kind of almost a bedroom community of Columbus.
In the county's comprehensive plan, Bob Eichenberg did some projections. Do you recall what those numbers are? But they do show an increase. If nothing else, we may become the far edge of a bedroom community that's going to come all the way down.
So that has implications for us in planning then out there.
For the Richland 682 project, we used a 0.5% per year traffic growth. That's probably a little low. But, I mean, for inside the city, that probably makes sense. That's probably a little low for the 5033.
Okay.
That's probably closer to 1% or 1.5%. But I would think at the end of this interchange modification study that ODOT has, we would have those numbers. So we can get those to you.
Thank you.
Andy, with your plans to go into the Southwest Sewer Project, one thing probably we need to do is look at I&I. And I think you've been off some places studying it, but I don't see much evidence in your plans.
If you look at this slide that's up here right now on the board, item number 12 right now is Southside Sewer I&I reduction. In an effort to combine several different projects into one, I plopped it in here as just Southside Sewer I&I. I see it as probably 3 different projects on the south side. Number 1 is an Oakmont Phase 1 I&I project, which is either a replacement or a lining of the Oakmont Phase 1 sanitary sewer, the Richland Avenue sanitary sewer, and then the Pomeroy Road sanitary sewer. And the Pomeroy Road one, if you know where it goes, it runs behind the houses on the right side over by Florinmore, and then back through the creek back there. So whenever it rains significantly and the creek fills up, so does our old leaky sanitary sewer. So in an effort to accept, or in preparation for accepting sewage from the Southwest, should we move forward with a teaming project with the county, we would have to do some major lining projects to stop that I&I, and those are our 3 major sources on the south side. We have a couple places around the rest of the city as well.
Yeah, Cable Lane.
Cable Lane, absolutely.
I am concerned because it enters in much closer to the actual plant.
Right.
So.
Right. We don't have to pump it as frequently, but it is volume-wise at the plant. It's definitely another major source. So, there's a lot of great technology out there today that wasn't here even 10 years or 5 years ago in sewer lining, and you get benefit by volume. So the more you can do, the cheaper it is per foot, where you don't have to get right of way, you don't have to dig up and make a big mess, but you can line these sewers. And the city of Ironton is doing a tremendous project right now where they're lining a tremendous amount of their sewers, and we've learned a lot from going down there and visiting and talking with them. So that will be a project that, as we move forward, we will look at which ones need to go first, and then how can we bring in a sewer lining company and get these sewers lined and the I&I stopped.
I think they were at least 8, maybe 10 million, so it might be beyond our ability.
It was part of that larger separation project in that they had to They're doing it kind of backwards in Ironton, where they have a combined sewer right now. They're taking their existing sewer and turning it into a sanitary system and building a storm system on top of it. Typically, cities do it the other way around. Typically, cities will go and build a sanitary system and leave their existing system to be a storm system. But Ironton found that it would make more sense over their 20-year period to do it this way. And the first step is lining what they have. So that's about $7 million.
But they have consent decree money, too, because
they do
of
have
Boston.
consent decree money, right? And
we don't have, thank God.
We don't, fortunately. But at the same time, it gives us some flexibility, but I don't think we have $7 million worth of lining to do either.
That's good. I guess when you start talking about the wastewater treatment plant upgrade, but just before you came on board, I remember sitting in meetings and they were talking about 3.4. Since it's twice as much now, I'd like to see at some point from you, maybe everyone can see it too, I wouldn't mind at all, what the changes are that you because that was done under the sponsorship of Burgess and Eichel, and I'm not sure it was accurate, but that was their view of it. And I remember the service director drew a red line in that and said, "This is as far as we can go." And so, $6 million is a fair chunk of change for a plant that we thought will be soon up to date. We can say, "Oh, finally, our money is spent well. We're all through." Well, I know that isn't going to happen, but I think I'd like to see some justification and exposition of where $6 million is going.
Absolutely.
Okay.
I wanted to
sooner rather than later too.
I wanted to put that number in there. In the planning stages of this project, which we're getting into right now, there's the nice to do, or there's the need to do items, and there's the nice to do items, and then there's the really nice to do items. And I think we'll have kind of the menu, and we got to decide. And part of that is driven by what outside funding sources we can get, if we can find outside funding sources. If we're doing it all on our own, then that $3.4 million is more realistic in what we can afford.
I think, and I really appreciate your your eager attitude and all that, and going out and get funding. But I do think a lot of the water and sewer and even the stormwater utility funding has to be local. I know. I think that but I think that people out there in TV reception land ought to be probably prepared for increases.
They should, because there's just not that grant money out there.
Yeah, because you're really spending highway trust fund money. I mean, the money we pay for gasoline taxes.
We say grant funds when we talk about these big ODOT, but it's money that you're getting back from putting into your gas tank in your car. So, it is money that we're paying in taxes. It just comes from an outside source. In the water and wastewater world, I'm finding that money just isn't out there. There's a few things here and there, but for the most part, they expect you to do it with loans. Now, they'll do low-interest loans, but to do it with your own revenue. You're supposed to be a self-sustaining operation.
And as long as we're not on the cutting edge of technology, that's where our problem was last time, because we put in the vacuum-assisted sludge drying beds, 3 different sludge treatment, and it ended up costing money, and we're still paying for it.
We're good on the sludge slide.
We've got 3 more years to pay it off, and they're long gone. So
the sludge slide is great. It's the other side of the plan.
Okay.
If anyone's interested, come see.
No, I don't. We'll go out there sometime soon. Thanks. Thank you, Andy.
Any other questions, Council?
Yeah. One other thing that we talked about, I think it was on a street tour perhaps briefly, was too much water sitting too long in some of our reservoirs. Is that addressed at all in these long-term plans?
If you go to, it's actually this particular slide here, it's number 13. I have Southside, THM, and energy improvements, but there's a couple locations around the city that are necessary to look at. We've got some situations in the city where we're not as efficient as we should be in moving the water we produce. That is to say, some of the largest users get some of the freshest water, and some of the smallest users get lots and lots of water that's old, because they've got a lot more storage capacity than we need. It was put there because of potential growth. It was put there because of fire flow needs. And so we've got to get smarter, particularly on the south side, about how we move water around. And the 3 large apartment complexes on the south side, Summit Coast Run, University Courtyard, and Carriage Hill, how we feed them water, because right now they get the freshest water in the city right from the plant, whereas we've got large reservoirs and water towers on the south side that supply a tremendous and hold a tremendous amount of water, but we just don't get the turnover, and we need to get that turnover. And so I don't have the way figured out yet, but it is on this radar, and it's something we got to do. One reason for that is in 2013, the EPA regulations for trihalomethanes, and that is to say what you can have. Trihalomethanes are a byproduct of chlorination. It just happens whenever you chlorinate water, and if it sits too long, these trihalomethanes develop. And so they're going to cut our limit of how much trihalomethanes we can have sitting in our water. And so it's something that we got to look at. But, we got it on the radar screen. It's something we know we need to do to meet that requirement when that new restriction comes out.
Great. One last quick question.
Software, too.
Right, and absolutely. We'll have to model the system to do
He's
that.
got the software to do that work. He just hasn't gotten to it yet.
We talked about that recently.
Yeah.
One last question. It's not related to what's on here, really. Street treatment in the winter. I had a lot of positive feedback when we changed to the sand-salt mixture, and I'm just wondering if that's going to continue this winter.
As far as I know, as far as the orders that I get from my bosses are that we use the same material, then we will use the same material.
Thank you.
Was there any downside to the
downside? There are
pea
two
gravel.
There are two downsides. Number one is it has a tendency to freeze, particularly when stored outside, when it gets, as opposed to the cinders that don't
and clumps up
and clump up and cause damage to vehicles. We tend to do a pretty good job getting it broke up when we load the trucks. The second is that it clogs storm sewers, and it makes it difficult to get. In the spring, when we go to clean up the streets, cinders have a tendency to wash away pretty easily. Pea gravel kind of sits. And so
you had to sweep it. I know it was in front of my house, but we don't have a storm sewer, so it didn't matter.
we can add that to the 2014.
No, I don't want a storm sewer. I don't want the water that's coming off the street onto my backyard.
Well, thank you, Andy. I have two things. I want to say that I think that the city does an amazing job on getting those grants that are out there. I think that we leverage the amount of money that we do get in just a really efficient, effective way to get so much more for our local tax money. And I want to ask, how important is the levy that's coming up, the renewal of the levy?
I will reiterate some of the things I said in the presentation regarding the levy. On the transportation side, and I'm talking streets, sidewalks, curbs, bike paths, bridges, the street rehab levy is really our lifeblood for capital improvements, major capital improvements. We can operate with the basic street fund. That is to say, we can fill potholes, we can plow streets, we can put up signs, we can run the electricity that runs traffic lights. We will not do major capital improvement projects if we don't have this passed. We will not do major paving projects. We won't do major bridge rehab projects because we won't simply have either the match for outside funding sources from the Highway Trust Fund or just our ability to fund it ourselves, because it's an absolutely critical item. And to your first point about the effort to go out and get grants, it's not just me. There are a tremendous amount of very hardworking people in the city, both in my office with my project management staff as well as in the auditor's office, that put lots of time and effort in ensuring we're in compliance with all the strings that come along with that money. So they deserve a lot of that credit.
I would point out that the slide he showed you was the recently completed objects 2005 to 2009. The ones with the asterisks were the ones that were levied, leveraged by the street levy. The other thing is it's frustrating when I see grants come past my desk and I don't know how to evaluate them. Andy does he knows where his area is. The police chief and the fire chief know where their areas are. It's always a question of how to get it to them. And very often I say, did you hear about that one? And he has already. So sometimes it's redundant, but I do get word of grants that come through. The biggest thing is evaluating how it fits. And that's one of the difficulties, whether we have the staff to administer a grant that comes through. Realize we've got the buses right now, but we've jobbed that out to have CAT because we don't have the wherewithal to track it as well as we would like to. It's kind of frustrating. I wish we could do more because I see these ones, and you don't know how they fit until you apply, and then how much energy. You look at the Mill Street one we're doing right now, that's really a remnants of one we tried for and did not accept, but we committed ourselves to doing that anyway because it came up on the radar.
I want to give the two planning commissioners who are in the audience, do you have any questions for Andy? This was going to be our joint meeting. Do you have any questions or? Okay.
Nicholas, RJ?
Kim.
Thank you. Thank you again, Mr. Stone. I'm not necessarily asking you to comment on this, but I do feel that it is slightly uncomfortable for us to acknowledge maybe as a city, but I do know that I've received concerns from people living up at University Estates about our street situation up there. I just wanted to remind us that it is a challenging dilemma and that we need to be mindful of that issue and perhaps beginning to figure out or look at potential solutions down the line here, brainstorming about what might need to happen. So I'm not necessarily asking you to comment on that, but I do know it's an issue or it's the elephant in the room. So I wanted to at least acknowledge that I have been in receipt of emails and concerns from people living up there about the street situation. So I know it's an issue.
Any other questions?
Those aren't our streets right now.
No, I am aware of that. I am aware of that, but it is part of the city limits. But
Would you accept a car that didn't have wheels on it if you went to the showroom?
I do fix up a lot of old things.
Usually you like them, sometimes it isn't.
My 84 Ford pickup truck and my 68 motorcycle, yeah, they're not always running as well as I would like them to.
RJ, you had something? Can you come up?
RJ, can you come up to the seat right there with the mic? For the television, you know.
I was just kind of interested in why the South Side sewer, the Richland Avenue in particular, I guess that area seems to be delayed in like the 2013. I think you've kind of touched on it, but at the same time, it's something that I've heard for years and years that, even the county commission has kind of commented on that. If we are going to work with them in terms of just the general sewage plan for the outside the city limits, their concern was that the south side is so bad that it's not worth tying into at this stage. So I'm kind of curious why that's been given such a long time frame versus, say, Circle Drive improvements or bike paths, things of that nature that are appealing to people, but at the same time aren't as important from an infrastructure point of view.
That's a great question. The item number 12 on this particular screen up here is the Southside I&I reduction, which is a sewer system on the south side. It incorporates both replacement of completely failed sewers as well as lining of sewers that aren't completely failed. The reason that it's in the 2013 to 2015 window there as opposed to something sooner is, number one, funding, in that the sewer system we had to pay for out of sewer fees or some type of outside funding scenario. Right now, the wastewater treatment plant, in the grand scheme of things I see when I look at the sewage system, is something that is more urgent. When we look at what we have both our sewer debt and then what we have capital improvements-wise, we go to about $300,000 to $400,000 annually that come in outside of our existing sewer debt that we can use for capital improvements projects. And so time phasing that money coming in, I see the wastewater treatment plant as the big rock that has to happen first, and then the south side is the next big rock. Of note, the way that I have it shown up here, I've got $50,000 in local funds and $800,000 in outside funds. And where that comes from, or the craziness that goes on in my head to come up with that number, is, for instance, when you look at when the Bookdale sewer was completed and plugged into the city of Nelsonville, the county sewer district got a significant loan from a 40-year loan from USDA in order to install that sewer system, and then gave the city of Nelsonville $650,000 in tap fees to make improvements to their system in order to accept that sewage. So I see a large outside funding, or a large outside amount of funding coming in order to accept that sewage, and I would see that would be something that we would spend because it would be directly necessary in order to accept it.
Was the South Richland ever considered as part of the general plan as far as the whole Richland area, as far as the roundabout, as far as the improvements to the northern end of Richland Avenue? Was that ever considered to be part of that project as well?
Well, of note, Richland South improvements is really above ground and drainage. And then Richland South side I&I reduction is sanitary specific. During the planning process of the Richland 682 project, a lot of the public feedback we got, as you mentioned earlier, was citizenry that said, hey, we got problems south of Dairy Lane, we got problems south of Dairy Lane. A lot of it is crumbling infrastructure. It's not necessarily a capacity problem. We do have some access management issues with very large driveway cuts, a lot of turning movements that are unregulated. There are some higher accidents in the section between 682 and Hooper, but it's not really a capacity issue. We don't necessarily need to widen. It's just fixing crumbling infrastructure. So earlier in the presentation, I noted that the two large arterials that we kind of have hanging out there, that we addressed East State Street, we addressed Richland Avenue, kind of from 682 on, or Dairy Lane to the north. It's Richland Avenue to the south, and then the Columbus Road, Lancaster Street connection. And it'll have to be a decision on which is more important, because we won't be able to fund both with regards to the stuff above the ground, the transportation stuff, here over the 2012 to 2015 timeframe. One will have to happen sooner than the other one.
And RJ, the Circle Drive, actually, we've been awarded about $400,000, I think, for the ARC access grant.
Right. There's an ARC access grant. The award letter came in here recently through the Appalachian Regional Commission for $400,000.
Yeah. So the 65 has been actually pointed up by the University Health Center, I think.
Correct.
Okay. Really, it just leaves $35,000 to either come up from the city side or an assessment process for that. And this is where that nursing home is going in place. This is very similar to the Access Drive that was on East State Street for the Holzer Clinic. This is money that's set by the Appalachian Regional Commission, and they want to work on access roads to various industry. And we awarded that, as I say, about a month ago. It's been kicked around for a couple of years of pursuing that particular grant. It's a very limited grant, but it's helpful. And that's why that, again, perks up to the top just for that reason.
And if I may say, I asked Andy today when we went over. What did I say, Andy?
She said,
we can't wait that long on Richland Avenue
this down here?
Yeah, why was that Richland South?
And they could very easily flip it.
But again,
everybody says that's what we need to do. My God, that's what we need to do.
And it could all change in one flash flood, realize. It's all floodplain right there.
Right. Don't say that.
Okay.
Well, thank you, Andy. Thank you for coming in. And if there's any further questions or people ask us questions, we can always email you.
Yeah, we'll add some detail on 11. Thanks.
Great. Thank you. That's all I have for the Planning and Development Committee.
I have a miscellaneous that I'd like to talk about. In my position in the food pantry, I've been talking to the Aldi people and the Save-A-Lot people, and I realized that it seems like there's some issues out on East State Street with respect to power delivery. And once in the past or so, we did write a letter to AEP, to John Buck, about power in the uptown. The people at Aldi's mentioned, and I think it was also the case on the other side of the street, that there was a problem with power, or there have been multiple problems. In the experience of the manager, it had happened again and again. And, they solved their problem by driving trucks in and moving the food out of the freezers. Save-A-Lot gave it all away. But, that's not something we want to see happen. I was wondering about the implication. I did talk to Andy about this, but I wonder if it's not a council thing where we need to say, hey, John Buck, we'd like you to look at East State Street. This is a major location for the manufacturing that's going on. It's manufacturing with a power loss could be a problem because of refrigeration, especially in diagnostic hybrids, I imagine, unless it's all shrink-wrapped. But, I just know from being around the university it's a problem. So I wondered if you wanted to consider writing a letter to John Buck and saying, guess what, we really would like you to look at that East State Street corridor. It's much more than it was before in terms of power delivery. I think those of you that go back into the olden days know that this part of Ohio was served by Columbus and Southern, and the organization of the space was very peculiar. That's what we found uptown. And I think that we almost owe it to the people out on East State Street. It's not a great-looking corridor, but it does have that major, now industrial, as well as commercial development, and see if they could do something to prevent the losses and the surges and the problems that are out there. What do you think? Should we look at writing a letter and bring it back next time, see if you approve it? Yeah. Debbie wrote it before, didn't she, with the Uptown? No? Find the Uptown one. I don't know if I can find it. I have too much paper in my life. Okay, so anybody opposed to it? I mean, it would just be saying, I know Andy's going to talk at his level to the guys he knows well, but I think we need to get it out in public and say, we support these economic activities. We need to have as good a power service in this area as we can get. Yeah.
I think that's a good idea, and we should also probably forward it to Ohio Consumers Council as well.
Okay, yeah, I think that's how we got their attention the last time. Because they really snapped too. We had a whole bunch of suits down here the next week or so. I mean, I would like action as soon as possible on that, because these are people that are paying taxes in our community. We have no control over the power, but let's get it looked at, okay?
I believe last time it was actually a resolution that was put forward and tabled. It never got to the voting
because that's right, they showed up before we got the name.
And I think the discussion was Andy has been meeting with people. I think that's coming out of the Strauss Run substation, which has to go with Bill. And I wasn't aware we had multiple outages. I know we had the major one.
Well, I just am telling you what they said, and I think it's fine, all well and good for Andy to talk with his colleagues there, but I think that this is a city-level situation.
You can tell me how often it's happening, or some kind of
I'll go back and ask all.
I do cross paths with John Buck occasionally, and we have a new rep for this area too.
I just think we need to support our businesses in this way if we can.
I wasn't aware it was such a critical problem. And remember, from that last one, an hour outage from their point of view was considered something over 5 minutes.
Right. And this one was much over 5 minutes. Yeah.
At the 16th, yes, it was. But,
but I meant
more than just a minor outage. Right?
I agree.
24-hour one too many weeks ago.
Really?
Right in that same section.
Yeah, I think it's just something that I think we need to say, as a city, and we deal with the whole city, this is a place where we want you to look. All right, I'll ask Debbie to look it up and see if we can find something. Anybody be opposed to doing what we did last time? Get their attention? Okay. Thank you. That's all I have. Finance.
Otter, do you have anything to...
I do. Just a couple things. I don't think it'll take long. I wanted to bring up the budget discussion items and timeline. Did everybody get my email last week? It's up to you to decide what you want to talk about or not. These are just things that have been on there in the past. Unless I hear otherwise from you, I will plan on doing my revenue projections at a regular session on Monday, October 18th. And that will basically start the discussion and all the meetings. But really, it's up to you. So if you could let me know if you have any changes or additions, I'd appreciate that, so I can be prepared. The only other thing I want to talk about is our bond refinancing for the community center bonds. I brought this up a couple weeks ago, and we have been working with our bondholder, the mayor, service safety director, treasurer, deputy auditor Ray Hazlett, and myself have met with him 3 times now, I think, for hours at a time. And we are working on a presentation that I think you will, it's a lot of work, but it's actually very interesting, and I think it will be good information for all of you. Also, it's been a good thing, kind of a learning experience for us to sit and evaluate our city, all the good things about it. We're trying to put our best foot forward, and it should turn out to be quite a presentation. As I said, it is a lot of work. We have a short time frame to do this. Our next payment for the bonds is due December 1st. So if we want to refinance, we really need to move this along in October so that we can get our ratings increased, and then it has to go out to bid as a bond. And there's a lot of rules and regulations regarding notification and timeframes for people to do that. And so where we are now, after meeting last Thursday, is we are continuing to work on a presentation, which we plan to do on October 20th. It's on a Thursday. But we also need to start our an ordinance through, and I've already talked to Dennis Schwally, our bond counsel, and I should have that by the end of the week. I'd like to put that through on Monday, start it through. I'd like you to start it through. It would be helpful if you could suspend and move it forward, but if you don't want to, I I guess I can't, the second meeting, maybe right after that, because we need that in place to move forward.
And I'd like to add that the point is that over the next 6 years, by calling the bonds and reissuing them now, we're targeting saving $300,000 for the city just by achieving a lower interest rate for the last 6 years, because there's been quite a change in the original projected interest rate and what we have now. So we're trying to take advantage of that. This is the first opportunity. It was set up that it could be called at the 10-year interval, which is now.
It looks like we'll be cutting our interest rate in half from about 5% to 2.5%, and saving about $300,000 in the 6 years' time. Which
And that's
is worth it.
Yeah, sorry. That's net after the costs of redoing the farm.
Good. Significant savings.
The only other thing I have for finance personnel is I need to re-up the agreement with Enterprise Development Corporation for a revolving loan fund. One of the findings that we had from the monitoring in July from Department of Development was that we did not have a fully current agreement with them. So I suspect any agreement of that nature really has to be authorized by you guys as well, just so you know. I'll put something together, but probably not by next Monday, but I shall try.
Don't you think Debbie has one? Do you have one? I'm sure I do. She's
Okay,
got one.
but then if you have
It'll
one,
be up and going.
change the dates and run.
Right.
Okay, and I've just been handed, Andy talked about safe routes to school. We have a current ordinance 11409, and we actually need $32,000 added to that. We passed that organizedly last year. So we'll need to probably suspend and approve this so that they'll have the money to work on those streets that he was speaking of.
114 coming from our funds or their funds?
I'm sorry?
It's my understanding the money's been appropriated, just needs the authorization to expend. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so there's no additional, thank God.
No, it's not ours.
Good.
Okay, so we can do that next week. All of a sudden, we have a little flurry of finance and personnel stuff. Anything else anybody needs to talk about?
It's not even midnight.
It's not even midnight.
It's because Andy was efficient with
We
his
thought
time.
this was going to be much longer.
It was great.
We're going to close the meeting. Okay.
Thank you. So when you're ready now.